There you go, Chris. Fabulous. I feel like we're getting more, even more crispness on that crisp opening now that you have a fabulous NPR buttery smooth microphone going on.
And welcome to NPR's FUMFA Poets and Writers Live.
Oh, this could be our audition tape, Chris. For getting a show. Oh my God. That would be like a kind of a fun little pie in the sky dream.
Tonight we have poems and fiction.
Oh. I like how you got a little accent on the fiction. Can you say fiction like that again, Chris?
Fiction.
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 And poems.
Poems. So I have an announcement.
Oh.
Tomorrow night, I am going to see the rough cut of Shriver.
Oh my God. Oh my God, Chris. Very exciting. Very exciting.
2 hours of splendid literary entertainment.
Oh my God.
I hope.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how could it not be anything but just absolutely fabulous?
Including my cameo, which so far has not been edited out.
Has not been cut. Has not been removed.
I was a little worried there because they had like a 2 hour and 15-minute cut, which is a little on the long side.
Oh boy.
For a sort of fun comedy.
Right.
And I said, "Oh man, that's it. I'm gonna be gone."
Oh
no. I'm in there.
Yay!
So I'm gonna see that tomorrow night. I'll report next week on. Well, if it's good, I'll report next week. If it's not, then I won't say anything. But
Chris, you have
sure
to.
It's really good.
It's going to be good. Oh, first comment out there from our friend Midnight. Hey, Philip J. Curtis.
Midnight has put it in the chat.
He has. And, around 8 o'clock, when we talk about our announcements, we'll have to talk a little bit more about how we are partnering with Midnight on a very cool put it into chat and FUMFA Live collab night. It's going to be so cool. Oh, and Mom is here. She is fully recovered. She is feeling better. Hey, Stacy Dyson is back. Hey, Stacy, congratulations on your new book. Great to see you. Yes, wonderful. This is so fabulous. Oh, so good to see everybody here coming on in, getting comfy. Very good. Lovely. Well, Chris, what are you drinking tonight? Have we met this beer before?
We might have. This is a local brewery, Nod Hill.
Ooh. Geo Bunny.
Nice beer.
Okay.
A bunch of beers, but this one is a India Pale Ale called Geo Bunny.
Geo Bunny.
I can't tell you what that means because I have no clue, but
oh man,
but it's tasty, and that's the main thing. I don't know where they come up with beer names. I think I don't know. They ask their 5-year-olds or something. Like, okay, what should we call this? And
I think it's very eye-catching. Whenever I go down the craft beer aisle at the liquor store, I'm always totally intrigued, and then I just end up getting the weird stuff that I that I usually get or like to try.
You get your whatever flavored something or other. For instance,
well, this is not too strange. I have a pineapple White Claw today, but on Thursday night of last week, I was out again at Yard House. I had another half yard with our friend Megan Muldowney. And that was fabulous. And I was also in Boston this weekend. I had a beautiful berry cocktail. And also, I had an espresso martini. That was fabulous. And then last night, when I was visiting my beloved friend Megan, we had some Riesling. This is now the alcohol recommendation show.
Katie Schneider's Drinking Diary, Part 17.
That is just too funny. We have a little question in our little private in-house chat here. Oh, you just answered it. Okay.
We don't know the release date yet. I don't know.
Okay.
I might find out something tomorrow.
Yeah.
About that process, but as far as I know, they're just trying to finish this dumb thing and get it done, and then we find the distribution.
Ah, yes.
It's an independent picture,
Mm-hmm.
but it has a sterling cast, and so it
So
should
cool.
land somewhere.
I am so excited about this, Chris. So you need to just keep us updated. But it is 8 o'clock, and it is time for our official welcome to FUMFA 55. And tonight we have with us Phil Ginsberg, a special guest performance poet, and fiction writer Julie Sarkissian. And we cannot wait to introduce both of these special guests to you, and hopefully get you really into their work. Phil Ginsberg is a friend from that I first heard on Put It in the Chat, which is Philip J. Curtis's Midnights open mic night every other Wednesday. So it was so awesome to hear him there. And Chris, you know Julie Sarkissian from the Westport Writers Workshop, yeah?
That's right. She's a very popular instructor there, and I have taught in the next room, and I've heard through the walls how excited those people are when they're in Julie's workshop.
Love it.
Sometimes I have to knock on the wall and say, "Keep it down in there.
Keep it down over there." Well, Chris, so that's what's going on tonight, right? But Chris, what do we have coming up?
Well, coming up, and I did forget to mention that today is National Children's Day, so that's
fabulous.
Something to mention. And of course, next week is Father's Day.
Ah, yes.
We don't have any fathers on the show, except for me. So it's a little irrelevant, but we do hope people.
That is not true. Always.
Well, I'm just saying, to the show itself, it's not like a theme. But next week we have a dear old friend of mine and one of my favorite writers, Stephanie Dickinson.
Awesome.
Who's just a force of literary nature and should not be missed. And the one and only Sonia Huber.
Woo!
Of the FUMFA family. And so we're looking forward to hearing from Sonia. And then, as you mentioned, the following week, we're doing Put It in the Chat night.
Woo!
Open mic night with a bunch of folks that our good friend Midnight works with a lot on his program, Put It into Chat, open mic. And so we're going to have kind of a hybrid thing going on.
It's going to be awesome.
Hybrids are, kind of part of the zeitgeist now. It's like hybrid cars. There's hybrid, my kid all year school was hybrid. Like they were partly in school, partly home. So hybrid is in now.
Well, it's just good to mix it up and meet some new friends. We're going to do a special format for that. So, just get excited. Get excited.
And then, of course, 4th of July, we're off, obviously, because, I don't know, there's no point in doing it that night. So the next week, we're having a FUMFA open mic. So all those FUMFA people from the Fairfield University MFA program, please, if you want to join us for that open mic and participate, please let us know. You can put it in the chat right now, or give us a shout out via email or Facebook or whatever.
Yes, and I'm going to put up a Google form in a few days, and a special little post just to remind you to put your name on that list for our open mic night. Yeah, easy peasy, so nice, so.
Google Forms when I was a kid.
I know. I wish they had Google Forms when I was in college, and I've only started using them in the last few years. It's so good. All right. Well, Chris, we need to introduce our first guest of the evening, Phil Ginsberg. Let's bring him up. Let me grab his banner. Welcome, Phil.
Hey,
Hi. How are you?
Very good. We're so excited to have you.
Well, let's talk in a half hour and see if that's good.
All right. Well, I'm going to read. Absolutely. I'm going to read your bio to introduce you. Phil Ginsberg is a performance poet playwright. His musical Almost Jerusalem won Best Libretto at the 2019 Moondance Film Festival. His new poetry book, In Pursuit of the Almost, is available through Endeavor Literary Press, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. Phil lives in Colorado Springs and is active in the spoken word community. All right. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. We're going to leave it to you.
All the way from the Rocky Mountains.
Again for 25 minutes?
Yes, 25 minutes.
25. Okay. We'll come on. At 25 minutes, we'll just come and throw you out of here, Phil. Just keep reading.
No.
What happens sooner?
Just keep reading. We'll stop you.
All right. No worries.
Oh, hi! The invisible audience. It's like the imaginary people I talk to every day. Well, my name's Phil Ginsberg, and this is my new poetry book, In Pursuit of the Almost. The Almost. Endeavor Literary Press.com/Ginsberg. That's me. I'd like to read my first poem, Truth Be Told. I saw Truth flick a cigarette at those guys. Truth don't even smoke, somebody else said. Another witness remarked, Truth didn't do anything. The guys in the car just shot for no reason. 3 people said Truth started saying stuff nobody wanted to hear. And somebody told Truth, just shut up. But Truth kept jawing at everybody. An elderly woman said, Truth was in the wrong neighborhood. Had no reason to be there, especially at that hour. Somebody said Truth needed to get his head on straight, needed some correction. One person who refused to reveal her identity said, all the witnesses were liars. Everybody's coming from a different angle here. Every cusp of a cause is claiming their truth is the real truth. Someone discovered Truth had been shot in the back. Apparently, Truth tried to walk away from the scene that night. Wasn't looking for a fight. Someone discovered that Truth may have been a victim of mistaken identity. That perhaps the guys in the car thought Truth was Truth's half-brother, half-Truth. Oh, it happens a lot. 5 suspects alleged to be in the car that night were brought in for questioning. Nobody admitted to anything. And no one who was at the crime scene was willing to go to the lineup to identify anyone. Well, you can't blame them. If they can kill Truth, they wouldn't hesitate to kill friends of the Truth, too. You should have seen Truth's funeral. People from every race, neighborhood, income, political affiliation, religion showed up. Who knew Truth had touched so many lives? Many testified how Truth always tried to make a difference. Repair their marriages, enable them to face their conflicts and addictions. One person even claimed Truth helped him to give up fried calamari. It was very moving. At the cemetery, with the lowering of the coffin into the ground, you may not believe this, but I was there. I saw it happen. Truth opened the casket lid and got out. Looked at everyone and said, I'm not dead. You can't kill me. I'm still here. Then Truth walked off the cemetery grounds, still in grave clothes, crossed the street, went into a Chinese takeout place, and 5 minutes later got on a bus with a carton of chicken fried rice. Some people were upset. Where did Truth get money for bus fare and food? Others blamed the media for hyping Truth's death in the first place to further their own agendas. Reportedly, Truth was seen the following week at a police interrogation in Damascus, a divorce court in Akron, a perjury hearing in Allentown, Pennsylvania, a confessional booth in Holland, and at a high school audition for Cats in Branson, Missouri. Truth, I found out, was recently stabbed in a domestic dispute in Richmond, Virginia, but survived. Truth, it seems, gets around a lot, but maybe not as much as some folks get around the truth. Thank you. Moving along, I like to read something called The Things I've Heard. I've heard of deaf people who suddenly hear, and hearing people who gradually go deaf. I've heard of pedicures that lasted longer than 3 hours and people with 6 toenails. I've heard of people who wanted to live and died, and people who wanted to die jumped off buildings, took pills, and lived. I've heard of famous people being unhappy and obscure people wanting to be famous. I heard that you loved me, but didn't think I loved you. I've heard of people talking about the end of the world and couples planning to have more children. I've heard of people coming back from near-death experiences and others still searching for near-life experiences. All the things I've heard. I've heard of kind letters that were never sent and hurtful letters that arrived right on time. I've heard of things spoken behind my back and things I've told myself in the mirror. I've heard your median income is $76,700, but don't feel anyone values you. I've heard of nations planning to make war and how peace isn't hard to find when you know where to look for it. I've heard of relationships going sour and people staying sweet, even after being treated badly. I've heard of boxing matches being fixed and how an overcooked duck, they can never be fixed. I've heard of politicians who never keep their promises, couples who keep their vows, even when it hurts. I've heard of comedians who are depressed and depressed people who wish they could do stand-up comedy. I've heard your medication doesn't work anymore. And your doctor secretly thinks only a miracle will heal you. I've heard of prayers that were answered and prayers that never had a prayer of being answered. All these things I've heard and thousands more. I heard that you loved me, but didn't think I loved you. I'm sorry. I've never been a good listener. This one Katie asked me to do, so I'll do it. I lived a long time in New York City. And, some days I miss it. It's called Another Tale of Two Cities. I was in my apartment on West 46th Street years back when I heard a commotion out on the street. I looked out my window and two guys with car doors open and ready to square off in the middle of 9th Avenue traffic. Blessed are the peacemakers, they should be called the children of God. I knew I had to do something. So I went downstairs to the street and approached the two. What happened? They both started screaming again. I said, listen, why don't you both just drive around the corner, park, and talk it over? You're going to get killed standing here. He'll drive away, one remarked. All right, I'll go with him. If he drives away, he has to take me too. I noticed both cars had Jersey plates. I was born in Jersey. I didn't want to spend another night there. I got in the car, we drove around the corner and parked with the other driver right behind us. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? Immediately, a patrol car turned the corner and I waved them down like I just witnessed a murder. I proceeded to go back upstairs to my apartment. I was fully expecting a call from the Nobel people in Sweden. Today, it's 9:30 in the morning, and I notice two guys in the corner are ready to square off in the middle of traffic. This is in Colorado Springs. A young white guy is doing a bad impression of Joe Fraser, hands up, weaving and bobbing. His adversary is a short Mexican man in his 50s who just stands there. What bothers me most is the young white guy's girlfriend. She doesn't intervene. I think she wants her boyfriend to turn the Mexican guy's face into salsa. I don't get in the middle of this one. I say a silent prayer and go into the bagel shop. 5 minutes later, I come out, and the Mexican guy is sitting on a park bench. His face still intact, all is quiet. Nobody got hurt. I have a feeling scenes like this are being played out in cities all over our country now. Frustrated young white guys wanting to punch out short, foreign-looking guys while their girlfriends look on. I eat 2 hot sesame seed bagels before I even get to my car. Then a 3rd poppy seed while driving home. No. NORAD. The air defense system for the nation is here. Every day I'm conscious this is the day we'll be nuked. I don't want to die with a half dozen hot bagels on the front seat of my car. When I get home, my wife asks me, what happened to the other 3 bagels? I shrug and say, NORAD. She's heard all this before. If you die, you'll go to heaven and the bagels won't matter, she says. I'm only half listening. I'm puzzled why the young white guy's girlfriend was so bloodthirsty, and why I didn't cross the street and offer the combatants an olive branch, or at least a blueberry bagel. I'm eating a 4th bagel now. Cinnamon raisin. There's only 2 raisins in the entire bagel. I yell out loud in the kitchen, we're standing at ground zero, for God's sakes. Put some raisins in these bagels. It's now the 3rd month since I lost my job. And it's a far, far cry from 9th Avenue, where I once made peace in the middle of traffic between 2 jerks from Jersey. I'm still waiting for a call from Sweden. Thank you. Okay, guys. Thank you for being so attentive. Although I don't know, I can't see you. Here's a poem called Hope with Toppings. I've gained weight. My doctor asked if my diet had changed. I told him I have been gorging on hope. He said, you need to monitor that because hope deferred will make your heart sick. Turns out he was right. The next day, hope decided what I really needed for a season was a diet of disappointment. It'll be good for you, he said. You'll thank me for it later. Sure enough, overnight, the promises I once fed on began to taste like hospice haute cuisine. Like pimento cream cheese, tea sandwiches, they served as afternoon snacks to the terminally ill. My heart went on a hunger strike. They force-fed me with an intravenous solution of positive placebos and eventually released me. But last night, something unpredictable happened. Amid the movable feast of the unforeseeable, hope showed up at my door with a 3-topping 16-inch pizza. Turns out he had the wrong address. It was for Lucille, my next-door neighbor, who recently lost her husband Mike to pancreatic cancer. I was happy the pizza was for her. She too had suffered a diet of disappointment for a season. 5 minutes later, she called and asked if I would like to help her eat that pie. Of course, I said yes. We ate, we talked, we laughed. And with every bite, we felt an appetite for hope rise up within us, like one of those self-rising pizza crusts they advertise on television. Speaking of crusts, Lucille remarked how the crust on our pizza tasted nothing at all like those awful hospice haute cuisine tea sandwiches. And I had every reason to believe her. Thank you. This one is called Key Issues. Am I the only one who has trouble finding his keys? I tell you, it used to make me so neurotic losing my keys that I said, these keys have to be punished. And so I would boil them. I mean, that's crazy, sure. But, you can't let objects push you around. People would come into my house and they say, what are your keys doing in a pot? And I said, it's a long story. Key issues. My keys are missing. They ran away from home. Tired of locks and slots. Tired of turning right, left, right. Tired of entrances and exits. Tired of ignition penetrations. Tired of pockets with used tissues and crumpled cash. Tired of clicks and clangs on the same ring of repetition. Tired of doing the daily dance next to the same ID supermarket and library ID tags. Tired of jagged existence. They got bored. Time to move on, they reasoned. There has to be more to life than this. I feel badly for them. Even if found by strangers, they won't fit in anywhere. They will discover what all runaway keys do. It's a jangle out there. They will seek to find their way back home. Too late, I fear. Like the title of Thomas Wolfe's novel, you can't go home again. Wolfe was right. They will be replaced with identical slot seekers, dead ringers of the previous danglers, dancing next to the same ID shimmy shakers. Perhaps the new notches will feel they are too big for their heads. Huh? They too would choose to go out on their own, leave home, look for new ways to find their groove, unlock their potential without ever reading a single page of Thomas Wolfe's novel. Thank you. So I have, oh no, I think I have 5 minutes.
You have definitely time for another. Do you have one more for us, Phil?
I do.
Yes, do it, please. Oh, it's so
Michelle.
fabulous. Thank you.
Okay. This is God and the School of Grammar. It is sometimes difficult to understand God's use of grammar. He leaves question marks where we hope for declarative sentences, puts brackets and parentheses around our desires, perhaps to modify our yearnings. He ends sentences with ellipsis, as if his train of thought got derailed, to prevent the 3 p.m. to Connorsville from running over a prostrate Indiana teenager with track-marked arms. He often speaks in fragmented sentences that would have aroused the wrath of Mrs. Nichols, my 5th grade English teacher. It didn't take much to arouse her wrath. At times, he uses adjectives. His use of adjectives is less than positive. When he speaks in the passive voice, it often sounds aggressive. He uses exclamation points sparingly, especially in my life. When he uses the future tense, I don't know what to expect. Sometimes I think he hangs the entire universe like a dangling participle, struggling with a loss for words. Hey, but who am I to, talk about God's use of grammar? I would know a prefix from a suffix. Although I once had a wonderful prefix dinner at a tavern in New York City. But this I do know. We are all complex sentences, created from meaning and direct objects of his concern. And although at times we feel like subordinate clauses, grasping for the subject and verbs that complete our existence, our story is in the hands of the best editor in the universe, who, by the way, wrote a book that a few people read and explains the meaning of life. Well, as they say in heaven, where even angels don't use the Chicago Manual of Style. Ain't that a shame? Thanks so much.
Phil, those poems are absolutely gorgeous. So gorgeous, so powerful. I know you can't see the live comments, but later, after the show, you got to go on Facebook or YouTube and just see all of the love from all of us here, including Jason, Philip J. Curtis, Chance Acevedo, and just, everybody here. It's just such beautiful poems. Thank you
so much. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
It was so great. Prefix dinner. I'm gonna use that at some point. But
that is so great. Oh, just so gorgeous. I wrote down this line. We are all complex sentences created for meaning and direct objects of concern. Chills. So beautiful.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you, Phil. All right, and everybody, you gotta put your questions in the chat for Phil for our Q&A time at 9. So stick around for then. And now we are going to bring up our second reader of the evening, Julie Sarkissian. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yes, we're so excited to have you.
Great. Oh, sorry. Oh, you're still going. I'm sorry. I was
No, not at all.
Hit the ground running.
I just got distracted by my phone for a moment. I'm so sorry. No. Chris, will you do the honors and share Julie's bio with us?
You kids and your phones. I will do that.
Chris, you're a little bit crackly on the mic. I'm so sorry.
Am I crackly
Yes.
now?
Yes, it's crackly.
It's crackly?
Yes, and maybe it will be a volume, a level thing.
I didn't do anything.
I don't know why.
I don't know why I'm suddenly crackly. Am I understandable?
You are, but it is quite crackly.
Wow. I wonder what happened.
Do you have some distortion going on, Chris? Are we getting a little funky?
This is my usual distortion and
Oh.
Well, listen, I'm just gonna do this and then
okay, we'll figure it out later. We got to get Julie injecting. Sorry, Julie.
Yep.
Welcome, FUMFA Poets and Writers Live. Welcome to Julie Sarkissian, who is the author of Dear Lucy, a novel. It's a fabulous novel, by the way, and she is also a writing instructor at the Westport Writers Workshop. She has degrees from Princeton University and the New School. Originally from Southern California, she now lives in Westport, Connecticut, with her husband and 2 kids. Please welcome Julie Sarkissian.
Thank you so much, Chris. And Julie, we can't wait to hear you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks, Chris and Phil. That was just so rad. Oh my gosh. So profound, so clever. I can't wait to buy the book and experience more of your wonderful work. All right. So I'm going to read a few sections from a book my agent is trying to sell right now. So keep me in your prayers. And especially those, with a close relationship to God. That seems like you, Phil. I feel like you know a lot about him. So the book is called The Canyon, and there's a lot of probably exposition that I should tell you, but it's always hard to figure out just what needs to be said to orient. Let's see. The narrator's name is Sky. She has a younger brother named Phoenix. They live in a rural part of Orange County, and her parents are hippie farmers who have sort of gone off the grid to live this idyllic lifestyle that is, of course, not all as idyllic as intended and hoped for. So the first section I'm going to read doesn't need to be prefaced by much other than to say there was the mom and the dad got in a fight the night before. So hopefully that's enough to situate you. All right, here it goes. All right. The next day, Dad brought Mom an orange vase filled with thorny, scraggly bougainvillea. He brought me and Phoenix 2 heavy brown bags filled with licorice and abba-zabbas and sour cream flavored chips and Nico wafers and Cokes and chocolate bars and two soft Eskimo pops. Mom was sitting curled up on herself on a worn chair and didn't say anything about saving the bags for later, eating an apple before, chemicals or sugar or anything. And words wouldn't have meant anything to us anyways. The only meaning in the world was the weight of the insides pressing against the paper, which felt thin and delicate, but plenty strong too. And it seemed I knew the exact placement of each item inside the bag. I could feel which one was the Nico wafer, how it was touching the Coke, how the Coke was leaning against the side of the abba-zaba. Like they were all parts of my body, and I could feel how they crowded my insides and took up all of my empty space and made me whole. Mom stood and took her flowers and kissed Dad and kept smiling at him in a way that felt even closer than their kiss had been. "You're in a good mood," Dad said to her. "This is such an interesting color," Mom said, stroking the vase. We took our bags and ran outside, past the avocados and to a cluster of orange trees that were too close together. We had planted them too close together because we didn't know what we were doing then, 17 years ago, when we became farmers, and now the orange trees crowded together and blocked each other's sun, and their branches were horribly intertwined, which was a problem, but it meant you could climb up onto the first branch and not be seen at all. Those trees were our favorites. We each picked a branch and we opened our bags and began to eat. I opened everything and ate all the things all at once. It tasted sort of bad and very good, like it always did, and I thought what I always thought. I thought, I want to save this. I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this piece of licorice. I'm going to save this Abba Zaba. I will bring it to school tomorrow and trade it for something. I will trade with Lisa for her peanut butter crackers. I will make this last as long as that $20 would have lasted. That's a detail from a previous scene. And then I thought the other thing I always thought when Dad brought back a brown bag for us, which was, I can't save any of it. And I did not think these thoughts one after another. I thought them exactly at the same time. I thought them on top of each other, and neither one was any stronger than the other. They were both exactly as strong. I tried to make the first one stronger. I tried to make save it be stronger. And I could, and I did. And for a moment, I was putting the licorice back into my pocket, but then the I can't got just as strong, and then it was stronger, and then I was eating it, and it was gone. All of it was gone. I'd eaten all of it, the licorice and the honey sticks and the Mary Janes, and I was drinking the last sip of Coke, and I looked over at Phoenix. He hadn't even finished one single piece of licorice. I hated him for it, because that was another power Phoenix had that I did not. He had the power not to feel his hunger, not to be crippled and frenetic with wanting. He was looking out over the vegetable garden at our yellow house and all the fruit trees and the deck with all the furniture on it for people who never came, and the pots, all the pots that Dad had made, and they were so beautiful. I loved them all. I loved every single one. When Dad came home from the studio where he works as a potter and showed his pots to Mom, that was when I knew Mom loved him still. And that was when I knew Mom had loved him ever. And that was when I knew that Phoenix and I were loved children, like they said when they joked with each other, except it was the truth. We were loved children. It all had something to do with Mom's headaches and where Mom came from, a cold place that she did not talk about. It had something to do with us and love, and it had something to do with the pottery studio, how Dad spent time there. That was the reason why they had the ranch. All these things were connected somehow, and I did not know how, but they held me in Phoenix like the branches of the trees. Dad went to the pottery studio after they fought, and he went to the studio when the house was very dusty. He went to the studio on days he wouldn't tell jokes with us. He went to the studio on days when he did not have a beard, but also his face was not smooth. He went on days when Mom banged the cupboards and tried to make us a lunch out of nothing to take to school. He went to the studios on days when He went to the studio on days when Mom did not say very much to him, but the way she looked at everything was the way she was not looking at him. She looked at the old coffee pot the way she was not looking at him. She looked in the empty cupboards in the way she was not looking at him. He was in all of those things. He was in the hard bread and the bottom of the jar of mustard that she scraped with a tiny spoon that was a mystery to me. What was the spoon for? Why was it so small? How had it ended up in a world that was too big for it? Dad was in the mismatched pair of flip-flop sandals that Phoenix wore in the creek. One was half a size smaller, and we did not know why. We had been given those sandals. Were they a mistake, or had they belonged to someone with 1 foot bigger than the other? Dad was in those sandals. Dad was in our faces as Mom kissed us goodbye without meeting our eyes. Dad was in our backs as she pushed us out of the door and down the dirt road towards the bus stop and seemed to close the door before we were gone, like she had caught part of us in the door, except she had not. Not really, because we were away from the house, walking down the road now. And when Dad came back from the studio, he was in the aqua pot with the lid he had made. Dad was in the rust-colored tray. Dad was in a black bowl, and Mother said, "Oh, Robert, we have to keep this one. Robert, this one is beautiful. Robert, we have to keep this one." She sounded as if she were accusing him of something, accusing him of wanting to throw the pots away, throw something more away, something irreplaceable. Except there were always more pots. They were replaceable. She would see that if she ever let one go. She would see that another would take its place. Dad never argued when Mom wanted to keep the pots. He never said anything about the money he was supposed to be making, that Mom nagged him to make, that he had promised to make. And he handed Mom the pots and the cups, and they belonged to her now. Or maybe they had always belonged to her. They filled the windowsills, they filled the floors. We filled them with coins and feathers and seeds and flowers and plants and dirt and nothing. And they spilled out on the porch, and we filled them with rocks and water and mud, and they broke in bad weather. And when the neighborhood dogs ran onto the deck, and we used the shards in our mud houses and our rock walls and paths that led to every single place we knew, a path to each tree, a path to each important part of the creek, a path to the part of the property we had been told was the line where it stopped being ours. And we studied it, wondering, how was this decided? And who was it that decided? And what changes when you go over that line? The pots spilled off the porch and into the garden, and they got broken down and broken down further until the pieces lost their color. They lost their glaze. But I will never forget where they were or where they had been. I remembered each one. I remembered where the orange one had gone, and the yellow one, and the tiny bowl, and the large bowl that we filled with ripe peaches the day that Dad brought it home. And we ate them after dinner with whipped cream, and we didn't take the bowl inside afterwards. And the rest of the peaches and the cream sat there and rotted, and Mom wouldn't clean it up, and I wouldn't clean it up, and Dad wouldn't clean it up. And then one day it was just pits with little rot stuck to them. And I thought maybe they were going to disappear, but they did not. They were still there. They were smaller and shrunken and weak, but they were there. And I knew they always would be. I finished my Coke and I threw it as far as it could go. I threw it at the pots, at all the pots, each and every single one of them, the ones inside the house, the ones that lined the windowsills, the ones against the wall on the porch, all the broken shards on the deck, all the pieces that were buried into the earth, all their dust, which was now mixed up with the dust of the world, and I tried to hit them all at the same time. All right, so that's the first little section I'm going to read, and thanks for going along on this ride. Again, I apologize if it's a little disjointed. So you got a taste of Sky and her sort of anxiety about the life that she and her family live. And it's a life of, great beauty, but also deprivation and certainly nonconformist. And her dream in life is to get into Stanford, which she does get into Stanford, but her parents refuse to pay for it. And not only refuse to pay for it, they refuse to help her with loans. At first, she thinks that's because they don't have money. She finds out they do have money, and they still refuse to pay for reasons that she doesn't understand but are revealed. And she decides she has no choice but to put that dream on hold. And naturally, she has fallen in love with the lead singer of a band. And as a sort of fuck you to her parents, she has joined the band on tour. So this is a brief little section from tour. And if I have time, I'll read from the end. But so this is Sky on tour with Nick, who is the lead singer of a little punk rock band called the Stuffed Shirts. So The night before the Roxy show, Nick and I got tattoos at a place in Hollywood with millions of pictures on the walls and in binders, all the icons, all the symbols, recognizable, universal, and yet personal and singular. I thought our tattoos were going to match. He was going to get my name and I'd get his name. All these weeks, we'd talked about getting tattoos together, so of course they would speak to one another. Of course they would have something to do with each other. Why else would Nick say, let's get tattoos together? But when Nick sat in the leather chair, he told the artist, the stuffed shirts. Huh? I said, that's what you're going to get? He blushed. Of course he blushed. I was so sick of his blushing. I doubted he even meant it. Yeah, he said. I rolled my eyes. Of course I wasn't going to say, I thought you were going to get my name tattooed on your body forever and ever, even though that's what I had thought and how I felt. What? He said. What's wrong? Nothing. I shrugged away from him. He sat back down. I hated him. Nick took a swig from his bottle, and the next thing I heard was the man saying, it feels like a sting, a sharp sting. And then I heard the buzz. I was strong enough not to turn around until the buzz had gone on long enough that I knew it was real. Nick wasn't changing his mind. When I turned around, he wasn't grimacing. He was looking down at his biceps, smiling, also pained. Nick showed me. It was so stupid, so ugly. It was a stupid, ugly name for the band. I didn't feel sad at all. I was furious. There was something boiling in me that felt ancient, bigger than me. A little bit of something from every girl that had ever been me was in me now, roiling. Nick laid back down. He rolled up his other arm. Same font, he said. Sky, like the sky, but with an E on the end. The tattoo artist nodded and drew something on paper, and Nick nodded, grinning at me, knowing I had always been some kind of fish on a hook, only now I wasn't fighting against the line anymore. The buzz came again, and Nick looked at me the whole time, and it was sort of what I imagined losing my virginity would be like, sustained eye contact, sharp breaths, and pain. Pain. His eyes were turning red, and I felt my eyes sting. I wanted to climb next to him like he was in a hospital bed, like we were in a sad movie. I wanted it to be my turn. I wanted to feel that pain. And then it was, and I took his place. The seat was warm. I took a swig and I felt it. Nick, on my arm, like a man's, in a man's place, my skinny bicep. We had matching gauze. We walked with our hands in each other's back pockets. We were the same height. We drank matching whiskeys. All right, so now I think I do have time. I'll skip to the end. So I do believe, methinks, I have given you enough to have some context for this last scene. Sky has decided to go on tour with the band for an entire year. She's sort of lost touch with her family over the last couple weeks, but she's swung by her childhood home to pick up some clothes. And this is the very end of the book, so it's a big spoiler alert. But so be it. Okay, here we go. All right. I went back through the house, and there was Mom. My heart was like a crazed animal on a chain. My breath caught in my throat, feeling like sludge. It wouldn't go in or out. I waited for her to scream at me, hit me like she'd hit Dad, but she didn't. Is that the musician in the van there? Mom asked. Yeah, that's the band, I said. My stomach was in knots. You didn't talk to them, did you? No, I just waved at them. That's it, Mom said. Neither of us said anything. Mom, I've got to tell you something. Me first, Mom said. And it was then that I noticed her face was clean and bright, glowing almost, and a faint cloud of confusion drifted over my fear. Come here, she said. Come sit down. I followed her to the sofa. We sat next to each other. Her hands were clasped, delicate, beautiful. Nobody else in the family had hands like hers. It was some gene that had been stamped out forever. She unclasped them. We'll pay, she said, and her face broke out in a smile, tense but bright, like morning sun too early. What? All the air inside of me came out as I said it. We will pay. We should pay. You deserve it. You deserve to go to school. Now, not next year. We don't want to stand in the way of that. I'm sorry that I had, and it's just not right to make you go through all that legal mess just to get good loans. But it's blood money, I said. It was hush money. It was, but now it's just money, Mom said. Now it's just paper. No, Mom, I said. Don't you do it. I want to. I need to. I called your grandmother, the mother's mother, and I told her. Told her what? I told her you got into Stanford. What? Why now, Mom? No, I did not say it. Oh, sorry. What? Why now? I said. No, I did not say it. I yelled it. I was yelling at her because now was not the time. You couldn't have called her when you knew I got in. You couldn't have called her during the 2 weeks when you were driving around with my acceptance letter hidden under the car seat. No, Mom said. I don't think I could have. I'm so sorry. They don't have a phone. Sorry, I should have told you that detail. From where did you call her? I thought wildly. Do you have her phone number memorized? Was it the same phone number you had as a child? What did my grandmother say? Did you cry? Did she? Does she regret everything or nothing or some of the things? Did she apologize? Did you? Did you tell her that? Did she tell you that she loved you, has always loved you? Did you? These were all things I did not say. Did you have to say you forgave her or something? I whispered. My throat was gripped, my stomach lead. So that you could give me the money? Is that why you called? No, not at all, Mom said. Then why, Mom? It came out as a wail, a sound that people make when they sink to their knees. It was time, she said. With you leaving for school, I realized how old she is, how much time has passed. I wanted to hear her voice again. We talked about you and Fee, and I realized that money isn't her money. It's not my father's money. It's not really even my money. It's not fair, but it is random. It's not by design. That money came from somewhere. It will go somewhere else eventually. I do not want that money, but that does not mean the money must die with me. Mom smiled then, sweetly, like she was looking at the face of the baby. That money had a long life before me, and it will have a life after me. I was just a stop on its way. And then something new started moving. The things my mother was saying, they did not feel like they were being spoken to me. They were being spoken to Dad, maybe, or the sister Mom invented in order to be able to read the letters from her mother. Maybe she was saying those things to her mother, forgiving her maybe, or to her own father, saying something that was not forgiveness, but it was a loosening of a fist. Or maybe Mom was saying those things to herself, to the eternal little girl self. And maybe she wasn't talking about money at all. Maybe she was talking about time and about living, that it starts before us and that it goes on with or without our permission. So we might as well give it permission. Outside, the sky was smoggy, hazy, making everything pinker than it was. Sky? I looked up from her face, out the window, towards the sky. I always felt I got the wrong name. I used to look at the sky and try to feel that I came from it, that my name had some meaning and was not random, was not a mistake. I tried to believe that my parents knew something about me that I didn't know, something about what I had brought with me from wherever I came from wherever babies live before they are born. My parents knew I would be big and wide and change colors and go black and turn light again. But I could never feel that way. I liked to be on the ground where it was safe and firm, the place from which the trees grew, the trees which were our food, our money, and our roots. Looking up at the sky for too long scared me. And now, standing in the kitchen, in the room where I had been born, I thought for the first time ever, maybe Mom and Dad were right. Maybe they knew something about me that it would take me a really long time to figure out. Maybe Mom knew it would take some time, but I would come to believe a person can expand just as it can contract. A person is many things. They don't have to be totally understandable or constant to be totally real. I wrapped my arms around Mom's neck. She was wearing the Shalimar, the one bottle of perfume she'd ever owned. She was wearing her gold hoop earrings. I'm not going to be back, I said when I let her go. What do you mean? I'm not coming back. We're going on tour. We're recording an album and then going on a tour with the band. I won't be back for the fall. Not this year, maybe next year. And then I can get better loans anyways if I wait. I don't want that money either, Mom. But you, she looked confused. She understood the words, but not the meaning. She knew what I meant. She remembered this exact feeling, but couldn't believe I was the one saying the words. Then she grabbed my wrist, hard and sudden. She brought my arm up to her face. The tattoo. She was staring at the tattoo. Her face blanched. I felt the color go from her face, down her neck, and into my arm, into the letters of his name, and settle there, like water seeking lowest ground. Nick, what did you do? I grabbed my arm free. What does it look like I did? Sky, no, please, no. No what? Don't break the rules? Mom, you already had a baby when you were my age. Sky, listen to me. Your whole life I've never told you what to do, but I am now. You have to go to college. When I didn't answer, she said, if you don't go now, you never will. Yes, I will, I waited to hear myself say. Yes, I am, I waited to hear myself say. It's just a year. In this way I can pay, and you don't have to use the blood money. It can stay hidden, silent blood money in its hole, and I can use clean money, money I will pay for with my own body, with my own work, in my own way. But there was just silence. I won't let you change your plans for a boy. She heaved the words out. You'll regret it, Sky. You might not stay in love with him. And even if you do, even if you still love him, you'll be living his life. You will have given everything up and you'll be stuck in someone else's life. And by the time you realize it, it will be too late. I know this, Sky. This is what happens. Do not let it begin, because once it begins, you cannot stop it. The sun was setting in out the kitchen window behind her. It was all sorts of it was all sorts of colors. It was telling some other story, some story about the world and time and all the animals that were extinct now that only the earth remembered ever knowing. The earth tried to pass on those stories to the people, but seeing the skeletons and the footprints wasn't the same thing as having felt their feet walk on top of you. I don't want it to stop, I said. You want it to stop. Mom was crying now. She was begging. She was saying, please do this for me. If you won't do it for yourself, I won't let you. You can't. I forbid you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have ever told you I wouldn't pay. It was a mistake. Forgive me. Don't throw this away for a boy, not for a boy, not for a boy. Throw away your own life for your own self, but not for someone else. I had begged her for so many things for so many years. Please, a phone. Please, a toilet. Please, a telephone, a purse. Please, a car, some spending money. Please, please, Mom, do this thing for me. Give me this thing so I can be the person I think I am supposed to be. And she had always told me no. She said it with love, but she always said no to all those things, all my beggings, all those years, all the things on my list, the list that only got longer and longer. I love you too, Mom, I said, and I hugged her. She said something into my shoulder, except I couldn't hear her. What I heard instead was Nick's voice. It was coming from the van. It was the strange way he made his voice when he sang, different and the same from his other voice, more self-conscious and more pure at the same time. It wasn't his real life voice, though, that I was hearing. This was something else. My breath caught. I pushed Mom away so I could hear better. The sound was coming from inside the van, deep inside the van, and it was getting louder and louder. It was from the radio. Nick was being played on the radio. Finally, after all of those years of imagining it and wanting it in their minds, they were hearing themselves on the radio with their ears. They were all cheering, and then they were turning it louder and louder, and the music reached out to me. The music knew just where I was. It knew where to find me, and it was being carried by something other than waves and frequencies. It was being carried by things that do not have words because they are many things at once. They are combinations of things that are a little different for every person, some mix of destiny and choice, history and fate, blood and will. And those things pulled on me, pulled on my neurons, pulled on my blood cells, and also on the blood in me that was not mine. It was Mom's blood, left over from when I still lived inside her. I told her again that I loved her, and I turned and I ran through the dust and under the sky, in between the walls of the canyon. And just before I got to the door of the van, just before I flung it open, just as the music fully enveloped me, I turned around to see Mom looking at me. I wanted to remember her there, watching me go, waving goodbye, and I love you, and please don't go, over and over on the porch of the yellow ranch house, the house where mine and Fee and Mom's blood ran onto our kitchen floorboards when we were born and sunk in through the floor and moved into every room until it flowed through the entire house, pumped by the beating of the earth and the shining of the trees, shining of the sun, never stopping, blood that would run forever, trapped within the walls. Since I was young, I always knew how to find a thing when I needed it. It wasn't magic. It wasn't a secret. It was simple, really. It was because I always remembered the last place I'd seen it. So I turned to see Mom there, standing on the porch, but she wasn't, not fully. She was opening the door to the house. She was moving inside, and it took a moment, and then I knew why. There was a phone ringing, clear and resolute. It was coming from inside the house. It was an undeniable sound, familiar in an eternal way, but new again. The door to the house was closed now. The ringing had stopped. She had answered. And that's all she wrote.
Thank you, Julie. Wow. What an intense and powerful and vivid and heartbreaking story.
Is that the very end? The very, very end?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It's the very end.
Intense and very, very, very powerful, very, very palpable and heartbreaking too. And I want to hear everything in between.
Yeah.
Everything that makes this family so complicated and this relationship so strained and heartbreaking. Really, really, really powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
All right.
The title?
Oh, The Canyon.
The Canyon. Right. Okay.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much, Julie. We need to get into our Q&A. And before we do, though, let's give another round of applause to both Phil Ginsburg and Julie Sarkissian. Yay! Thank you so much, both of you, for reading. It was so great to hear from both of you. And, Chris and I usually note that there is some kind of like serendipitous connection between the two, authors and their writing. And what I noticed more than anything else was both in this kind of repetition, like this exploration of a theme or a metaphor with repetition, and also this kind of like tenderness and intimacy in that of feeling, and that was very cool to kind of hear in both of your pieces that you shared. Very, very cool.
Well, sure, yeah. Phil's poems are very narrative and story-like, and Julie's, there's, these long poetic sentences.
Yes.
Overlap.
That was awesome. Well, so while we are waiting for some questions to appear in our chat, I usually like to start with a question about how things have been going for you in this last crazy year of quarantine, of COVID, of vaccinations. How has it been for you as a writer, as a performer or reader out in public? Have you embraced online readings and performances? And just how has it been for you? I guess let's start with Phil, and then we'll go to Julie.
Well, when you're locked indoors for long periods of time, you have a lot of choices to look at the wall or maybe write. And so I chose to write. And
Perfect.
I have some poems about COVID, actually. But,
oh, well, yeah, we've heard quite a few over the past year plus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think creativity doesn't have necessarily a set of circumstances around it. You can work with those circumstances.
Absolutely.
And performing, I hadn't done any until Friday night. It's the first time live performance, and it went pretty well. It's nice to see people
Yes.
perform. I mean, that's about 70% of it. You're doing it for a live connection with people.
Yes.
And so I'd say COVID has not been a blessing, but it hasn't been a curse either. I've tried to use it the best I can.
Absolutely, Phil. That's such a fabulous perspective on it. And, even though the kind of the isolation has been so hard, we've met so many writers online through this time. This live stream came together during this time within our own community. We've gotten to know people better and hear from their books, and we've gotten to connect with so many people, including you, Phil, and Midnight and Stacey Dyson and Chance, who are in here, and a whole bunch of more writers, and of course, and you too, Julie. It's so great to meet you. So I think it's kind of pushed us to make connections, but there's nothing quite like being physically in a room together. And so hopefully, Chris and I can plan some in-person things as those become more and more possible.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to do that. And the only problem with that is, if somebody's in Colorado Springs, it's hard for them to be there.
Right.
So you get something, you lose something.
Mm-hmm. But I think we should, when we do a live thing, like an in-person thing, Chris, we should stream it too. We'll talk about it. It's going to be awesome.
We'll stream it, but it might be hard for people to participate.
Yeah, we'll fly you out, Phil.
Where are you, by the way?
We're in Connecticut.
We're in Connecticut. Right. So once we get that liquor store signed up to sponsor us, those bus tickets headed your way.
Yes, we'll send them over.
We won't fly you out, but there's a Greyhound with your name on it.
Yep, exactly.
Peter Pan bus is headed your way.
Well, give me a week, I'll be there. Yeah.
Perfect.
Spoken like a true poet.
Yeah, exactly.
Julie, what about you? How has it been for you?
I like what Phil said. It's like, I think there were so many periods of my life. Like, let me start over. Discipline came not easily for me. I was used to sort of writing for class, essentially. So back when I was, in my younger years, and, that was it. It was all kind of deadline driven. And then I finished my MFA and just was, in a way, it was almost like COVID because everyone was all like at work and like having a job. And I waitressed I waitressed for 10 years at the same place, but that was at night. And so it was really isolating and I was all alone. And it was a really challenging process of, developing accountability and figuring out what that looks like. And it was really, really slow. But I would say that I don't know if because it was so hard earned or, whatever it is, but it was very internalized sort of as a lifestyle, if you will. And I think, there didn't seem to be any reason, certainly not to write during COVID. And excuses are sort of anathema to me. I don't know if you find this, Chris, but like, I can't stand when people are like, oh, I didn't write because the nanny was like, it's just like, that's not why you didn't choose, like you didn't because you chose not to. That doesn't, Toni Moore, it's like you could just, your mind immediately goes to all of the people that, had to fight for it. So I think I was actually very disciplined in the beginning with my husband, like working from home. And I was actually like finishing this book that that read a little bit to you guys from. And teaching was really what the big change was, switching from in-person classes to Zoom was felt like a much bigger change than there was a bigger change to my teaching than there was to my writing. And that was a really mixed bag. And I don't know if you feel that way, Chris, but I was, heels in the ground. I'm not going to do this. Like, I was just like, no, like it's a non-starter. And then of course not only made peace with Zoom, but really came to see the benefits of it. And one of those is certainly being able to have students that aren't, in Connecticut and not in Fairfield County. My best friend joins my classes now from Brooklyn. I have one of my former students from Brooklyn now joining us from LA. I actually have multiple students from LA. So I don't really think Zoom is going anywhere, but the events is different. But, it almost makes like what we just did tonight almost strikes me more like a podcast than like an event. It's almost its own little thing. It's like it doesn't have to substitute it. It can be like
it can still exist as its own own thing. Yeah.
As its own offering. It almost is like listening to the radio or like the news or something. It's interesting. I never would have thought of it that way. But there's benefits to not having to leave your house late at night and
absolutely. And
certainly not as sexy drinking alone in like my little like office with the cat and the cat food, and there's like a fly buzzing around here.
I know what you mean, Julie. It's a mixed bag. There are these aspects, that are certainly not ideal.
Very writerly though to be sitting there alone drinking with a fly buzzing around. There's a long literary tradition of that happening.
No, I think you know what, you're totally right. I also moved my dresser, or what did we do? We put new feet on the dresser, so we emptied out all the drawers, and I have a couch. I won't show you this picture because I won't embarrass myself. I won't flip the computer around, but I just dumped all my clothes onto this couch in my office. And of course that was like 2 weeks ago. And like, I've not put one thing away. So just to add to the squalor atmosphere of my office.
That's so funny. I totally get that. I'm so tired of my apartment at this point. I'm like out whenever I can be out, and, just so thankful for vaccination. I totally hear you, Julie. And I totally get it. I have a quick question. Stacy has a fun question over here for you, Phil, which I just have to put up here because she is so excited to have heard you tonight. And she said, when are you coming to San Diego? We need to do a show together. It's been way too long.
Everybody wants me to travel here.
It's the other direction, but it's a shorter bus ride. So
it is a shorter bus ride.
From Colorado? Maybe. I don't know. Stacy, I don't know, but I'd love to.
Phil, I have a question for you and also for Julie. I would love to know, Phil, how did you start writing? How did you get involved in the spoken word community? And how did you start doing poetry and performance poetry? What was your on-ramp? Was it a great class, a great teacher? Were you a reader as a child? Was it always something that you did?
Well, I was in theater.
Nice.
And I used to, at one point in my life, I wrote for other people, comedy. And they would get paid a lot of money. I wouldn't get very much at all. And I started out
shocking.
Actually singing. I was a vocalist and I used to sing.
Whoa.
But I couldn't take it seriously. In the middle of a song, I have to say something stupid, and just I couldn't take it seriously. And then I started writing poetry and performing it here in the Springs.
Nice.
And I found it was a very unique way of having a personal expression, connecting with people without a lot of other factors, needing other actors, needing directors, and so it's a solitary, risky thing. I mean, you're the one out there.
Yeah.
But I found it's almost like a prayer, offering a prayer.
Yes, yes.
And you hope the audience has an amen for you. That's all.
I love that, Phil. Yes, amen. Amen to that, Phil. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It doesn't surprise me at all that you were involved in theater.
In comedy, right? That's what I was thinking. Oh my gosh.
Theater, I mean, you are performing these poems, and I mean, you are like really, you're an actor up there. You're connecting the way a good actor connects.
Well, I hope so. That's
totally captivating.
That's the intent, and who is your audience? Well, you try to pick one person that you're really talking to, and
yeah. Who was it tonight?
That's a secret. Okay.
Oh.
My mom just put an amen, Phil, in the chat. Everybody loved your reading, Phil. And both of you have to go onto Facebook, onto YouTube later, and just check out the comments and the love that you've received. I know you can't see the live chat, but both Facebook and YouTube, check it out. Really, really enjoyed what you shared.
Oh, thanks, Julie. You were wonderful too. Thank you so much.
Of course. And Julie, I wanted to ask you, how did you start writing? Was it in school? Was it because you were a reader, or you just had?
Probably because I was a reader. But I mean, it came sort of, I remember hearing voices in, maybe like adolescence, and sort of just writing them down, and I guess they were poems. Maybe one day I'll drag out. I won a big poetry award as a 13-year-old, which was a big surprise. But that wasn't really like, I wouldn't. There was no. It was very. What's the word? It was almost like it happened in a fugue state. I wasn't really aware of it. There was very little intention. I never showed anyone. I mean, I guess I signed up for that contest. I wanted to win a free thing to Disneyland.
But it was very private for you.
Very, 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 very private.
Wow.
Even, and I'm not a private person at all. Chris is probably the only one that can attest to that. But I'm a total open book, and
I love relate to this.
I love geeking out about teaching and books and anything, fashion, Real Housewives, but. For the longest time, I couldn't even, I couldn't, it's not even like I didn't like talking about my work. It was like physically, it was like I was incapable of it. The level of, I don't even know the word. I just felt stripped, so raw, so vulnerable, so exposed, almost like ashamed, like such intense visceral reactions.
Wow.
But now it's actually teaching, I would say, helped me become more comfortable, because my students just model, like, I don't know, like, it's such a cliche, but they teach me so much, and they teach me how to like be vulnerable and be open, and really what you get from it. Because it's not to say everyone needs to be the same level of open and vulnerable. Like that's not the answer either, but seeing sort of the benefits and the balance, and like it's such another, I guess I'm full of trite but truths today, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of thing. So
yes.
So anyways, so that was the beginning, and then I did pursue it, but it was like very closeted, very.
Yeah.
I hated talking about it when people even after I had my book come out, if people asked what I did, I said it was a waitress, and it wasn't to be falsely humble at all. I just did not want to talk about it, period. So it was very organic, but somehow still totally uncomfortable and painful at the same time.
I totally understand this because even though I did an MFA and I had this wonderful group of people and my mentors and a little bit with my family that I shared my poetry with, everybody knew that I wrote and it was important to me, but I never showed anything really to anyone except my mentor and maybe like very, very close writing friends until I felt it was super ready to be published. And I'm still kind of like this, even though everybody knows like, I'm a poet. This is my book. I have all these.
Amazing!
But at the same time, I'm kind of very private, especially with things I'm working on.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yeah.
I have a whole manuscript that I'm sending out right now. It's like, what? Thank you.
So
no,
Julie,
I hear you.
But
Julie,
I get that feeling. It is vulnerable.
You talked about hearing voices when you were young. I kind, I wanted to make a joke about that. Say, there's medication for that. But anyway, but you write so beautifully from a kid's point of view.
Yes.
In your first book, and then in this book, part of it is. I mean, she's young anyway, but it says the early part.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there some sort of?
Yeah, I think there's like maybe some like
voices you're hearing.
I think so. I think it's almost like. I'm like, I think it's like early childhood trauma or like, I mean, there's like a word for it. I think it's like similar to like synesthesia or something. It's just, it's just something in the brain that connects with whatever. There's just there's these unconscious connections being made. But I definitely, I feel like I write most, not authentically, but the flow state comes usually like somebody that is like still living or heavily involved like with their parent, namely their mother, even if they're like separated. And it's a lot of like the pain of being separated by from the mother, the ambivalence, the desire to sort of be one and be understood, and also kind of the desire to be whole on their own. So I think there's definitely, there's a pathology to it. And then there's, could it have come out in some other way? Probably, like it's
interesting.
Well, we all have our methods and things that we gravitate towards, and it all has to do with, who knows? The first,
it's like, I think it's like
year of life. I don't know what it is.
I know. I think it's sort of almost like an unfinished business thing, It's like, I keep writing the same thing over and over again, but that's the only thing that ends up feeling true. You know how Hemingway's like, oh, I want to write, like, my goal is to write like one true sentence a day. And it's like, you really feel when something feels true, and when something feels like, oh, I had this idea, or this could be cool, versus like, oh my God, there's already this thing, and can I be a conduit? Like true, well, like Phil's poem about truth. Like, it's like, there's like an undeniableness about it, and it doesn't really need to be qualified. And it's not to say like every sentence needs to ring with that truth. And even like my dialogue, I find really stilted. I don't like my dialogue at all. I can't write it in a way that feels true. I almost never do. And so I'm not saying that's like the standard for every sentence, but I think you certainly like, you know it when you, at least as the author, right? It's like, maybe your reader doesn't have like that distinctive distinction, but you just can't, you don't want to qualify it. You don't argue with it. You're like, oh, that's true.
Yeah, when you kind of get into, when you tap into that inspiration, it almost leads you, and you're in that flow state. And you're like, I know, like this is what I need to write right now, and it seems to always gravitate towards that same direction, and that is true to you. And that's like when you're doing your best writing, when you just like let that happen, and you edit later.
Yes, I agree. Oh yeah, don't mess with the flow state, right?
I wanted to ask you, absolutely, Julie. I wanted to ask you, Phil, about your writing process. How do you get into a poem? Do you have a moment of inspiration and then flow with it? Do you go as the spirit moves? Do you have a writing discipline with your poems? How do the poems come into existence?
It's a mystery sometimes. Sometimes it's an experience that you just take to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And then imagination kicks in, I hope. And
Yes.
I once I once went shopping for a white noise machine for my wife.
Wow.
And I went to Mattress World, and there was a black manager there, and I asked them if they carry white noise machines. And we had this look. And I wrote a whole poem.
Oh my God, so
What
funny.
it would sound like to a black person, you know?
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Clouds,
I know what you mean.
hockey skates on ice, a tea party round. And so just the incident triggered an idea.
Absolutely. And then you live this fascinating moment, and then to crystallize that in a poem and expand it and connect it to other things. That's just.
But do you just like run home and start writing that, or does it like
percolate?
Yes, percolate. And do you know the difference? Like, do you know, like, oh, I can write that right, or no, I have to let this sit for a little bit.
I sometimes I let it sit because I have bad knees and I can't run home. So
you have no choice but to sit.
Yeah,
that might be a good thing. It's just you give it that percolation time.
I'm really the right word is very important to me. To wait for the right word, you know. And so some things just flow, and some things it takes a couple of days. You go back and say, no, I like this better. I like that better. You know, one of the great influences on me, I think what maybe the one that got me involved in this was Spalding Gray. Do you know his work at all? Monster in the Box. I saw him and I said, that's what I want to do. Just a guy at a table.
Yep.
Telling stories. And it was marvelous where he took us. He gave us flight, you know.
I could see that. I could totally see that.
I just read what's it called? Impossible Vacation.
Oh, really?
Oh, I loved it. And it's so narrative. And, you know, at first you're like, is this just a guy like talking about his like family vacation? And then on some level it is, but then, you know, on another level, it's you know, that's just the exterior. That's just what it looks like. But really it's about, you know, so.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
I loved it.
Tragic ending, but he was wonderful.
Yeah, very tragic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, I
Yes,
think it's time for our famous last question. We may take a little minute extra, but it's worth it. We need to ask them our famous last double question.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Here we go. So it's 2 parts. First part is pearl of wisdom for writers out there. You know, budding writers who are emerging, quote unquote. Any pearl of wisdom is something that you can impart to them. Part 2 is a book recommendation. Anything. Julie, that's a pearl of wisdom. I'm sure you've dispensed many pearls over the years in the workshop. But what comes to mind tonight?
You know, what comes to mind is something that is said in so many different ways, and it is so hard to practice and it is so hard to live. But I think that sort of committing to it allows for such like deeper meaning. And that is, you know, well, the way I phrase it is it's focus on the process, not the product. So not to be focusing on the way something looks or how it'll be marketed. And there'll be a time for that, right? But I think finding a process that feels authentic is the only way it's going to be sustainable to even get that product, you know, out there. So I think, you know, I think that takes really us practicing sort of non-attachment, you know, and God knows that's hard for us Western people. But, you know, if you're, you know, in this MFA, you know, even if you're even listening today, you know, probably so many people that already have, like, you know you love it, you know you have the passion for it, and if you're sitting down and sort of working authentically and creatively, you don't need to look past that on any, you don't need to look past that, and maybe you shouldn't, because you'll know when it'll be clear when it's time.
Right.
A little bit of like getting out of your own way. So that's my pro of wisdom. And I know it's nothing people haven't heard before, but maybe sometimes that's
good. We need it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, particularly for us, we're as writers, we read a lot, right? So it's like we always hold these books in our hand, and it's hard not to think of what we're writing.
Like, how does it get to this right now?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, what will my author photo look like?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like you're on page 3 of your writing novel, and it's like, well, I want mine to be in black and white.
Yeah.
What's the movie? How is it?
And I would sometimes say I have this other thought, which is like, if you're interested in like a black and white photo of yourself, like go take a black and white photo of yourself, but don't like
hold your writing hostage.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's such a good way to put it. Okay, sorry. We need to hear from others.
Book recommendation though first.
Well, this is just right here on my desk, and it just has the best cover. This is the complete stories of, sorry, I don't know where the camera is.
Oh, it's good.
Of Leonora Carrington. She was a surrealist writer and painter who lived from 1917 to 2011, a master of the macabre, gorgeous tableaus, biting satire. And this is her self-portrait. Speaking of author photos, here's her self-portrait. It is the weirdest thing you will ever read. I feel like Phil would really like it. It's they're short. Not all of them are finished. It was published posthumously on that 100th year anniversary of her death. So it got a lot of coverage then, 4 years ago. It is just as strange gets, almost like little fairy tales that you could read to your kid, except it would like scare the shit out of them. But I've been having a lot of fun with that. Yeah. So weird.
Thank you, Julie. And Phil, a pearl of wisdom and a recommendation.
Carrington. Yeah, I like her work a lot.
Oh, she's a poet too. She writes poetry as well.
I'm a big fan of the surreal, so yeah.
That's great.
Well, I think it's about finding your voice and not being afraid. And even if a lot of people don't understand it, you have to be true to it.
Yes.
I have 5 criteria I approach to everything. Creativity, originality, imagination, beautiful madness, and healing laughter are the 5 things I try to incorporate in what I do. And,
healing laughter.
Love that. I love those 5.
If I can incorporate all those, I think maybe I'm being true to my voice, really. And to touch something higher than myself, Transcend,
yeah.
You need to write one of these books, these like, there's so many out there, but I would read yours,
1,000,000%.
Write those books, how to write books, it's like, and here are my 5 things, and just like go off on each one for a little while. And,
you should, Phil.
Become a self-help guru on top of it all.
No.
You got it all figured out for you, Phil.
I once thought about being self-employed and laying myself off and having to explain to the last interview why I did that.
Yes. I love that.
Can someone really teach you how to write? I don't know.
Right.
I remember when my kids were really little and life was such madness, Phil, I used to say, and this was totally genuine, it wasn't being cutesy, but I was like, if my life were a job, I would quit. Like, this is just too much for one person to bear. But I'm a little bit out of the weeds. But
Julie, that's so funny. But Phil, your book recommendation. I know there are so many, but the one at the top of your mind, maybe.
Wow. Well, I have a poet I really like, Charles Simic. Do you know him?
Yes.
I'm very fond of him. and his work influences me. Charles Bukowski influenced.
Oh,
Nice.
yes, I see a lot of Bukowski in you, Phil. I feel like you guys would be friends.
I'm not an alcoholic, but I like Bukowski.
Yeah.
I don't think he was a nice person to hang with.
He doesn't seem, oh my God, remember he tells that story about like going to a reading and just like yelling at the people there? He's like in a drunken rage. He like doesn't even read any of his poetry. He's just like berating the audience.
That's horrible.
I have a Bukowski story.
Another influence is Ionesco, the playwright, the Romanian.
Yeah.
I love his work. Rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros, I just started that. We have a lot of back and forth going on. A lot of vibing.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's how you said his name. I'd never be able to attempt to say that.
Well,
UNESCO.
it has been so awesome to have you both here tonight. Thank you so much, Phil Ginsberg and Julie Sarkissian, for being our guests and for reading and for sharing with us tonight. One more round of applause.
Thank you so much.
The audience is clapping at home as well. And you're absolutely right, Julie. There was so much vibing, and we're all, guys just meeting tonight. Thank you so much for being our guests. Thanks, audience. And this will be archived on Facebook or YouTube. So if anybody wants to watch it, rewatch it later or anytime, you can find this recording out there. And forever. It's been a fabulous night. I know I want to rewatch and just enjoy everything that you've shared again. But have a great night.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Julie.
Oh, nice to meet you, and so nice to meet you, Katie. And are you must be Connecticut if it's Fairfield, right? Or where do you live?
I'm in Norwalk, and Chris is in Ridgefield.
Yeah. Well, we have to can we drag Katie into some of our events, or is that like some kind of conflict of interest, Chris?
There's no conflict of anything.
Bring her next as soon as we have some in person. Now I'm like promoting my cult. The Westport Writers Workshop. But we got Katie. Bring, please, Katie. I'm the next in-person thing we do. I'm going to invite you because you're fabulous.
Thank you so much. I can't wait, Julie. We'll connect.
And you're all invited too, all of you guys out there as well that I can't see. But I feel you nonetheless. I feel you.
We'll post it. We'll share it out with everyone. Thank you so much. All right. Well, have a great night, everyone, and we will see you next Sunday night.
Thank you. Have a wonderful.
Happy National Children's Day.
Good night.